Okay, let's start this thing. We've got Justin Woolley here, Melbourne author of A Town Called Dust, the Territory series.
Territory series, that's it.
It's the one for the camera. And we've got Hope, Launchpad member extraordinaire.
Right, extraordinary though?
You're extraordinaire.
Sure.
So you reckon there's $1 million on the line from ABC
Yeah,
for podcast?
for podcasting. It's obviously not one podcast is going to get $1 million, but they've put aside, I think, $1 million worth of grant money for people doing podcasts.
I'm going to put my hand up.
You should. Podcasts are a big deal now.
Is this a podcast?
Yeah, sure.
Is it?
Well, do you do an
you're
audio?
Young, you know these technology things.
No, I don't actually.
Okay.
Do you do an audio version? I mean, all you got to do is strip the audio out and then put that as a podcast on iTunes or whatever.
Yeah,
and it's a
true.
podcast.
Yeah,
that's what a lot of them do now. Though they have the video one for YouTube and then the audio one to go on to iTunes or whatever.
Yeah, the only reason I don't do that is because you have to pay hosting to all the popular audio podcast hosting sites like SoundCloud and there's like LibSync.
Yep.
They've got like, free up to 3 hours worth of content, and then you pay a monthly subscription.
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, I can put like a full 1080p HD video of it online for free
for nothing.
With reliable old YouTube, who everyone's got it on their phone, the app, and all that kind of stuff.
True.
And if that's free, I just can't bring myself to pay like $8.
Do you already have a website though? You got a website, don't you?
I do, yeah.
So you can probably host it on there.
You just host it through there.
I think so. You just need a RSS feed or something, probably.
And then you like link that to iTunes and stuff.
And it picks it up from there.
All right. We just got more technologically advanced.
This is interview about podcasting techniques.
Podcast about podcasts. Oh, there you go. Yeah, I should do the audio version. I suppose I can do that in the future. Like you said, just strip out the audio.
Strip the audio out, yeah.
Who cares about podcasts? Let's talk books.
Yes.
Is this what we're meant to be doing?
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to ask Justin, and this is more my own curiosity, but I figured if I'm curious, then everyone else will be. That's how my brain works, very egocentric. You have an agent.
Yes.
And you're published.
Yes.
And you've sold the film rights to your novels, is that right?
That's right.
Yep. These are all endeavours that I want to know how it's done.
Yeah.
Because I've heard, and tell me if this is right or not, it's harder to get an agent in Australia than a publisher.
That is probably true. It's probably harder to get an agent than a big publisher, certainly. Than a little publisher. It's good to have a agent to get you into the big publishers. So you're more likely to sell a book to your, Harper Collins and your Pan Macmillans and people like that if you've got an agent. So but Australia has a pretty good small press scene where you can get, your work out. Yep. And you definitely don't need an agent to go that route. And even lot of the big publishers here will have manuscript Mondays or whatever, or once a month you can send them.
They just open the
doors. They just open the doors to anyone, unagented manuscripts. So, but it's certainly a benefit to have an agent.
Yeah. They're fighting your battles for you.
Yeah, of course. And my agent is also a lawyer, so all of the contractual stuff you have to deal with is nice to have someone who knows what they're doing. Yeah. Looking after all that sort of stuff.
And I saw on your blog, I was doing a little blog stalk of you before.
Yeah.
That oh my gosh, I should do some research. That your agent, she's also Supernova Literary.
Well, she was. Yeah. So that was my first agent.
Oh, really?
So I'm actually with a different agent now.
Oh,
yes.
Good stuff.
But she was. Yes. She actually left agenting to go and do that full time.
Oh, okay.
So that was cool though, because she's the Supernova literary manager, so she looks after all the book guests for Supernovas, and that means she's kind of brought out to Australia like George R.R. Martin and people like that. So
yeah,
it's cool to.
She's got a network.
Yeah, definitely has a network. But yeah, she actually stopped agenting, so we left on good terms. It wasn't like sometimes you hear about authors breaking up with their agents in
Oh, yeah.
nasty ways or whatever. But
No.
certainly wasn't like that. It was mutual stuff. So, and then I've since then have another agent who took on a lot of her clients when she finished.
So you kind of went,
Yep.
naturally kind of progressed to this other one.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And so what was the process like to get an agent in the first place?
Well, so I guess the traditional process is to, write a query letter, and which is a letter which would contain, say, a little bit about yourself, what your book's about, any experience you've had, and you send that out basically like cold to agents. And they go through the pile of those they get, and then they say, well, I like the sound of this book. Could you send me either a partial manuscript, which might be like the first 50 pages, or the whole thing, the full book.
Yeah.
And they'll read that, and then they'll, come back with a yes or no. So that's the traditional way, which...
so a biography and a synopsis.
Usually, short synopsis, and then a little bit about, yourself and everything. I'll come back to that because that's not how I did it.
So you didn't do it that way?
No.
Yeah.
I was lucky. So I actually was at a supernova. So before I wrote my novels, I'd actually written a graphic novel.
Ink. What was it?
Oh, Ink Tales. No, that was a different thing. Yeah, I have got a story in Ink Tales. But this is a graphic novel that I wrote, and it got picked up by a publisher. It's been in kind of development hell, I guess you'd call it, for a few years with changing artists and everything like that. But it's getting illustrated now. But I went there to went to Supernova to catch up with the publishers of my graphic novel, and met Inika there, my agent who we were just talking about, because she was obviously running the book people, and she introduced me to, I'd met her, and she introduced me to Hugh Howey and some cool people, and then she said, oh, what else have you written other than this graphic novel that you're working on? And I'd finished A Town Called Dust at that stage, but it was just, sitting on my hard drive. Hadn't done anything with it yet. And I said, I've written this post-apocalyptic YA book. And she was like, oh, that's really interesting. I'm a literary agent too. Why don't you send it to me? So I sent it to her, and then she was like, all right, let's do it. Signed the contract and everything. So it was really...
Walked into it.
I did walk into it. It was a bit of luck, I guess. But I kind of think you've got to put yourself out there in the situations where you're going to get lucky. So, but
who you know.
Yeah, exactly. It is who you know. So that was how I got my first agent. And then consequently, when she stopped agenting, I've got another one now. But coming back to the query letter thing, I'm actually doing that now. So...
Because you're looking for an American agent,
correct,
is that right?
Yes. So I'm trying to get a US agent. So I'm going down the query letter path on my new book that I finished kind of the end of last year. And it's tough. So I think I've sent, I think the last time I counted it was 82 emails out to agents in the US.
Yeah.
I think I've heard back from 40 or so, and maybe 32 of them have been no's, just straight flat rejections, and then the rest have requested to see either a partial or a full, and they're kind of reading them now. So I kind of lucked into my first agent, got books published, and then I've gone back to kind of the slog where most people start in the query trenches.
In your query letters, do you make it clear that you're represented in Australia and you've got an agent?
Yeah.
Because that's sort of due diligence in a way.
It is, and I mean, it was something that I'd discussed, obviously, with my Australian agent, and she was good enough. I just was honest and said, look, I want to get, I feel like the best step for my writing career is to try and break into the US market, and get a US publisher, because the market over there is so much bigger than it is here. And I said, look, that's my next step, and what do you think? And she said, well, I don't have great connections in the US yet, I'm building them, blah, blah, blah. But she was like, look, go for it, and if you get one, we can talk about whether I stay your Australian agent and your US agent represents you over there, or whether you just want to go with them. So she's really good about it. But I do think you have to be pretty honest in your relationships with agents or publishers or anyone, you know.
Yeah.
Better just to be
upfront.
upfront.
Do anything behind their back or anything.
No, publishing's a small industry. People are gonna.
Here it is, especially. Isn't it?
People find out when you do dodgy things. So it's better just to be, you know, upfront.
Be upfront.
You know.
I mean, how many publishers are there even in Australia? There's only, like, by comparison to America, there's a handful.
Yeah, there's a handful. I mean, there's the big five, obviously, like the, you know, Penguin and Random House and Harper and Pan and stuff. But then, smaller publishers, there's a few, but especially, and then when you go down into genre fiction, fantasy or science fiction or whatever, there's even less.
There's not much, is there?
Yeah. But, yeah, so that was how I sort of got my agent initially, and now I'm going through the hard yards trying to get another one.
Should we talk about your series?
Sure, let's do it.
Let's hear about it.
So it's basically Mad Max meets The Walking Dead. That's
pretty cool.
That's my little pitch.
Was that your pitch in your query letter?
Well, I didn't do one for those. Remember, I lucked into it.
Oh, true.
Yeah. Kind of post-apocalyptic YA set in the Australian outback. Kind of 300 years after the zombie apocalypse. Everyone kind of lives in and around Alice Springs, surrounded by a giant fence to keep the ghouls out, which is the monsters in the book.
So you're saying they're not zombies, they're ghouls, they're dried up zombies.
Because it's not cool if you write a zombie book and you call them zombies. You've seen, that's just...
Is that right?
Yeah, The Walking Dead, they're called walkers, like...
White walkers.
White walkers in Game of Thrones. You can't call them zombies or else it's just not cool. Also, there is... Actually, zombies has become like... Zombie is the word in the zeitgeist, right, for the living dead, like monster.
Yeah.
But it's really actually kind of the horde of zombie type thing was like an invention of guys like George Romero. So the zombie is actually like a religious thing. It's a Haitian voodoo. I mean, it's totally accepted now, as that's what you call them, zombies. But it's the kind of not. It's not really the right term for them. Anyway, they are. Let's go off on a bit of a tangent. You've
got a point to make about this.
I've got a point to make about
I love when
cultural appropriation.
You always tap into stuff with writers where it's like, it's a touchy subject for them.
I was really a touchy subject.
With Robbie the other day when we touched on something and he just jumped off on it. It was like, oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
It was about some author. Oh, it was about Game of Thrones.
Oh, right.
Yeah. About Game of Thrones and he just launches.
It's not really a touchy subject. It's just like, it's not... You want to create your own creatures as well in your book, but it's like a bit of a cultural appropriation thing, really.
Yeah.
Calling them zombies. But anyway, we won't go down that.
I like the ghoul, because you said before it's because, there's scarcity of water.
Yeah, so they're designed... to fit the setting in there. So it's set in the Australian outback in and around Alice Springs, and that's obviously kind of a dry, desolate landscape. And I wanted to set it there because that's already kind of post-apocalyptic out there, which hence the kind of Mad Max vibe.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
But so the creatures, the ghouls, instead of eating you like a zombie wants to, they drink you. So they're like dehydrated and kind of desiccating and like crumbling away into dust, and then they drink you, which is like the blood, the water in your body, everything. That's what stops them basically from decaying away to nothing. So they're driven by a thirst, and so they're almost kind of part vampire, part zombie. So I kind of thought that fits with the desert kind of setting.
Yeah, sets the scene really, really well. What kind of world building? Like, how far did you go with that before you for your setting? So you've got your historically the apocalypse. Yep.
So like an disease outbreak.
Yeah.
Kind of standard, zombie disease outbreak, but that happened, 300 years ago. mankind gets kind of wiped out, and the last sort of remaining fragments of the population live in the outback. At least in Australia, they live in the outback, surrounded by a giant fence to keep the ghouls out, and that's where humanity's eked out this survival, scratching at the desert to survive kind of thing, and has been for hundreds of years. So there's a culture has developed in the outback. So I guess I'd spent a bit of time in Central Australia. For my day job, I've been to a place called Woomera, which is sort of halfway between Adelaide and Alice Springs.
Right. Yep.
Been into Alice, so it's I guess just having been there, got the kind of the sense of what it's like, that desolate kind of empty landscape that's just flat, as far as you can see, and it's pretty spectacular, and it's also kind of frightening out there.
Endless dirt.
Yeah, it is. It just seems like endless dirt. Like, you can, the people in the story, in the territory, believe they live in a world of endless dirt.
Oh, okay.
And they just believe the world is just a wasteland forever.
So they don't really know the world's history.
No.
They just know the
they know bits of it, but it's kind of a big theme in the book is it's not really about the zombies, the ghouls. It's about the people forced to live under the kind of constant threat of these monsters that just live outside in the world, in the wasteland. And so a lot of it is about what society develops when they're forced to live like in enclosed space like that. So there's a really quite an oppressive religious structure, and a government that maintains quite tight control over people to keep people safe. At least that's their outward motivation. Right, it's all about power grabs, really. But there's themes about like that control of people living in the outback like that.
Yeah, right. And then so is there do they explore outside of these boundaries?
Yeah, so
venture out into the world?
So that's actually what I was going to say. They have basically that religious oppression, and the government oppression has kept down knowledge of what the world was like before. And that, so things like like oceans are kind of mythical. People or legendary, they believe there is. People like to believe there's oceans in the world, but they're just kind of story. They've seen one.
Yeah, that's cool.
So stuff like that. So I guess, and no, it's illegal to go outside the fence. It's like punishable by death, and so people don't do it. But part of the fence is knocked over at the beginning of the first book, and a big kind of horde of ghouls get into the territory, and that sparks off the whole story and leads down the path of the two main characters, a teenage boy and a teenage girl, kind of figuring out that the world is bigger than they've been told, and that there might be people out there, and sort of learning about how controlled they really are, I guess.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, a bit of that metaphor for like freeing your mind and breaking out the barriers of your own mind.
Yeah. So it's awesome. A lot of it's about exploring like control, like I said. So it's a bit like, I remember when we were talking before, you said like, is it, you thought maybe it was like 1984-ish or that kind of dystopian.
Yeah. Well, I didn't realise that there was the ghoul element. So I thought it was dystopian, but not in fantasy kind of realm. Yeah.
It's so in a way it is kind of like that, right? Because the ghouls, they appear a handful of times in the books, and they're mostly just a threat that drives the people, because all of the best zombie fiction is about people. It's not about zombies. Are actually a pretty boring horror monster when you just consider it's just like, I suppose they are, because they don't have
much of a motivation behind them, do they?
No, they don't. They're not complex. Right. Yeah. But when you get that horde of them, that one, you kill one, two more take its place. There's hundreds of them, thousands of them coming. It's like that overwhelming. They're a really awesome metaphor for feeling overwhelmed. So
yeah.
You have one werewolf, one vampire, and that's terrifying because they're gonna, kill you or whatever. But I like the zombie, but not necessarily because of the creature, but the feeling they inspire, that overwhelming
wave of terror.
And it's just going to keep coming, and everyone's kind of felt overwhelmed at times. And it's about, I guess the books are really about what would a society that is feeling that constant overwhelming fear all the time turn into.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Hope. You're sitting there very quietly.
Yes.
I'm wondering if you're bored out of your mind, daydreaming.
No.
Do you have any questions?
I have one question.
Yeah.
Because you said the apocalypse happened hundreds of years before the book is set.
Yeah.
So how did you explain the history of the city and the town inside the book?
Very slowly. So basically in the first book the reader doesn't have any idea how the society has come to be the way it is. There's there's these side mentions of what they call the reckoning, what the church calls the reckoning, which is when this all happened. And then obviously you hear about the creatures, and they talk about the ghouls as like a punishment from God. So they believe that basically the ghouls were like the flood, God's punishing everyone. So he sent these creatures to wipe the world out, and they're like the last remnants of humanity, and the church believes they're only the pure kind of will survive, and blah blah blah. So you learn about the history through people discussing it and their attitude towards the creatures and other people, and then slowly as the series goes on, you start piecing together more and more, and then without spoilers or anything, once they kind of learn about the world outside the fence, they learn about places that had existed previously, cities and things like that, and they learn a lot more about what caused it all, in the second book and third book.
I like that, how they've kind of woven symbolism and mythology into the reason it happened, so that the experience for the reader and the protagonist who's learning along with you, they have to sort of decipher which bits are folklore and which bits are truth.
Yeah, so they call it so there's all these legends, and it's all kind of a little bit of Australiana thrown in there too, because it's set in the outback.
Yeah,
so they
cool.
call there's this place called the Big Smoke, which is what they refer to as it's basically like a mythical city.
Yeah. And
people believe that maybe the cure for the ghouls is in the Big Smoke, and everyone's like, that's not a real place, it's just a and then as we go on we learn what the Big Smoke is and where it is, and
that's cool. That's cool. My experience living in Hobart, when I lived in Hobart for 1 year, the Big Smoke was Melbourne.
The Big Smoke was Melbourne. Yeah, that's right.
They'd call it, if they were going there, they'd say they're going up to Australia for the weekend.
Going to the Big Smoke.
But I don't want to guess because I don't want to spoil anything. But that's cool. I love that. That's really awesome.
Yeah, so it's sort of just how, I thought, what would people do in that situation? And you think about, how different the world might be in 300 years or whatever if the world all fell apart and you didn't have access to a lot of history. Yeah. And then they had to sort of attach their own meaning to the things that happened with their limited knowledge. Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. So it's sort of, and I think that's a good technique anyway as a writer to reveal what you know about the world very slowly to the reader. Yeah. Certainly keeps them, not a big info dump at the beginning. Previously on my world that I've created, here's all the things that have happened. You just want to drop people in, and you want them to. It's good, I think, to have a reader for the first few chapters at least going I have no idea what these people are talking about half the time. Yeah, that's true. We were talking about this the other week with Robbie, weren't we? About that and how slowly, it's surprising how slowly you can drip feed this information. I think the most important thing is that you have to know as the author. Yeah. Because when you're reading it, it's so obvious when the author themselves don't know and they're making it up as they're going along, as opposed to slowly revealing it. Yeah. You can pick it straight away. I don't know how, it's like a sixth sense, but you just they're making this up. Like when you're watching Lost or whatever. Yeah. After a few episodes, it's
this doesn't.
That sort of thing,
Yeah.
like serial fiction, like on TV shows or whatever that they are making up as they go along. It becomes like totally obvious when they've like I don't know where they're going with this show.
I mean, I don't want to talk bad of a very popular book, but The Hunger Games for me really struck me as one where they were making it up. Like
possibly.
I felt like they wanted it to be set in dystopia, and they made the dystopia, but they didn't make the reasons for the dystopia. They didn't start from there and extrapolate out until it was, post chaotic event, apocalypse or whatever. They kind of started with post-apocalypse. Well, I don't think it's an apocalypse in Hunger Games. It's more like
it's a war, I think.
Uprising, yeah. But then as she went, she seemed to backfill it, and it's just like you can just pick holes in it. You just poke. I don't know. That was my experience.
Yeah, I mean, it happens in a lot of books. Happens in a lot of sometimes really good books.
True.
So a lot of Charles Dickens books have some glaring plot holes in them.
Right.
And it's because he back in Victorian England was releasing his fiction serially, in a serial. It would be published one chapter at a time in a magazine, and he would just write them one at a time. And so whole characters vanish for ages, and then they come back later.
About them.
Yeah, because he's forgot about them, or he's decided to do something else, and so he doesn't have the benefit of being able to go back to a full draft of a book and fix it up. So it's interesting. You can see sometimes it's like a remnant just of the way the author worked or the book was published or whatever.
There's a good film coming out. Well, I don't know if it's good, but it looks good, about how he wrote The Christmas Carol.
Oh, Christmas Carol. Yeah,
it looks quite good.
Oh, yeah.
I think by the time he wrote that, he was already quite well known.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
I don't think he ever wrote a book in his life. I think he only wrote serials that later got turned into books. I think,
that could be true. Yeah, you'd have to check that.
Check that.
Fact check. No, you may be right, but certainly that was the most popular way to read at that time.
Right.
That serialized fiction, people would read them like in the kind of periodical
in a magazine or whatever, newspaper. Yeah. Huh. I'm no Charles Dickens expert, so I'm just.
Neither am I, to be honest.
We should talk about something we know.
I've read a few of his books.
Let me ask you your favourite author.
Oh, that's tough.
Is it a hard one?
It is a hard one.
Okay, how about this then? Who was your first favourite author?
Terry Pratchett.
Really?
Probably.
Yeah. Yep.
So he really got me into writing. I mean, I have been writing since I was little, like stapling together little books and doing the illustrations and stuff like that when I was a kid. And then I think I probably started reading Terry Pratchett, I don't know, maybe 12 or 13, I guess. And it was like a bit of a revelation. So I'd read, prior to him, I went on a bit of a sword and sorcery kick, so I'd read The Hobbit and read Lord of the Rings, and I read like David Eddings, people like that, like big fantasy authors who do that kind of traditional type sorcery, fantasy, high fantasy. Yeah, high fantasy, yeah. And then Mum bought me some Terry Pratchett books, and I started reading. I was like, oh my God, this is funny and fantasy, and also really the world building was just phenomenal. Yeah. And then he used his books to reflect things about our world. And that's what I really liked about what he did. So he wrote books like, it would be about gender equality. That's what the theme would be. Yeah. But it would be because, this girl wasn't allowed to be a wizard because you had to be a guy to be a wizard, and it was totally about gender equality, but he did it in this like hilarious fantasy novel. So I think he really showed me about world building and how you could do a lot like fantasy could be more than just dudes with long beards and staffs yelling spells at each other. It can be funny, it can be really cutting social commentary. And so I think he was a really kind of everything I wrote from probably 13 to 17 was a Terry Pratchett knockoff.
And you got to love that British humour as well.
Yeah, everything I was like, I can be funny like Terry Pratchett or Douglas Adams or something like that, and I couldn't.
Well, that's funny that's your first favourite author, because that's my most recent favourite author.
Yeah.
So I only read Good Omens. I'd never read Terry Pratchett or Neil Gaiman.
Yeah.
Right, up until only a few years ago. And so I thought I'll read Good Omens because it's my first, it's two birds with one stone sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then from there I went and read Mort.
Yeah.
And now I'm reading The Ocean at the End of the Lane.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing, like I don't know, I felt not embarrassed, but I was just like, in both of my first novels, there's not a single joke.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why did I take it so seriously? Why did I not put any humour in my books?
People do that, I think. Especially when you're starting to write, you don't want to let your personality in, because this is serious business.
Yeah,
I'm writing a
book. It's an intellectual pursuit.
Whereas, you want it to be funny. You want the full
cheekiness
kind,
in there,
a bit of wit and a bit of humour, as well as kind of emotion and action and stuff.
Yeah.
What about you? Who's your favourite author, Hope?
Currently, it'd be Rick Riordan.
Oh, yeah.
That's my current favourite author, but I have a few other ones that are like...
So I've never read... He's Percy Jackson, right? Yeah.
I'm not actually reading the Percy Jackson series. So
have you read those, though?
I'm just reading Heroes of Olympus, which has Percy Jackson in it.
Yeah.
But like off to the side.
It's a different series, right? Yeah.
I didn't know that. I just thought that they were the Percy Jackson novels.
No.
Well, yeah, there you go.
He's super popular. Like, I should check him out.
He's really good.
Just because he's so popular. I feel like sometimes when you hear about, like, authors that are writing, I write primarily young adults. So when I hear about, like, young adult authors that are just really popular, I feel like I need to read just to see what the buzz is about,
Yeah, see what you're up against.
Yeah, well. Well, then sometimes you do what we were talking about before, where, you read a book and you're like, I quit. Like, I'm never going to be able, I'm not going to be able to do this like this person. I'm going to quit writing. It's a silly thing.
Yeah, no, that was my Robbie Verhagen experience. How old is this guy? I'm out of here. Yeah. No, what is it? Hemingway said you should only ever compete with dead authors, right? Or yourself.
Dead
I think
authors.
that's
Why is that?
good.
Because they can't get any better.
I think it's because I think it meant more like you're competing with yourself.
Yeah, of course.
You shouldn't compete as an artist with other artists.
No.
I think that's one of my philosophies.
I kind of see it like, it's hard not to read a book by a great author, or a book that you think is fantastic, and not feel that twang of like envy or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's just, I think it's about how you channel that. If you say, "Oh, that means I need to get better. I got to write more. I got to work hard on my craft," I think that's a healthy use of that. Whereas the unhealthy use is the I quit, or whatever mentality. Because I think there are like two things that make you want to be an author, and that's like reading a book and thinking that is awful, I could write a much better book than that, or you're reading a book and saying, oh my god, that was amazing, like I wish I could write like that, and then setting out down that path, and then you kind of, that's a good way of channeling that.
I've always categorized great, like writing that I love, into two buckets, and one is writers who I read it and I'm like, I love that, and I feel like I could write that. I feel like I could mimic that really well. Like if you stopped halfway through reading it, I could keep writing it and someone wouldn't be able to see where it feel like that.
Ghost
How
writing.
true that is not and those for me were like Roald Dahl, Tim Winton. They're very different, but both of them I had that same feeling, like I can do this sort of thing. J.K. Rowling, and then there's the other bucket where it's like it's brilliant, but you just feel like your brain is wired in a different way. It's like the sentence structure. You read one and you're like, I just couldn't
like Hemingway, right?
I couldn't make that sentence. You know,
the way Hemingway writes, like you mentioned him before, but like my brain doesn't work the way his brain worked.
Oh, really? Mine kind of does all the run-on sentences. And
it does like that?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I do get called for a bit of, like, with my writing kind of group, my friends that are writers that we kind of critique each other's work. I get called out on my run-on sentences. But he does that run-on thing with a lot of word repetition.
And
Well, just like I won't be able to think of an example off the top of my head, but you know, like he'll mention like soldiers or something. Let's say he's, you know, because of course he's always writing about soldiers. But let's say he's talking about like a soldier. He'll write like the soldiers are wearing blue, and the soldiers are doing this, and the soldiers are doing that. That kind of way he writes in that repetitive flowing way. I'm like, my brain doesn't work.
It's kind of childlike in a way. But
almost.
But not. It's tasteful. I quite like Hemingway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted what you were talking about.
What was I going to say?
Hemingway.
Yeah, no, he's in my can mimic bucket.
Yeah, okay.
Who's in my can't? Like Robbie Verhagen is one in my can't mimic. I read his stuff. I'm like, God, how does your brain work?
Yeah.
It's on a different pattern than mine.
I think is reading someone who really digs for really like I guess unique ways of describing things.
Okay.
And I really love that when I see someone who sees, like an author who sees the world and draws a simile between two things when you're like, wow, I never even considered looking at that way. You know, like or they find some really cool description and you're like, oh, that's awesome. Like, but my brain doesn't come there, you know.
Right, yeah.
And I know when I'm writing, like sometimes I pull out this great description and I'm like, yeah, that's some gold. And then other times I'm like, that is the most generic description of a room anyone has. Like, you know, if I'm like going to describe the carpet in here, my first instinct is like sea blue or whatever.
Right.
It's blue like the sea. And then that's everyone's first.
Yeah.
So you got to dig for like, what is the description of something that instantly brings an image of that to someone's head, but they would never have described it that way themselves. Like, I think that's a real gift in an author.
Yeah. My pet peeve with similes, and I find this all the time, and once I say this, you'll start fighting it, is that the thing they compare it to is more obscure than the thing that they're describing.
Yeah.
Right? And then so it's like they describe a basketball as round as like, and then I'll say some obscure thing you've never heard of. It's like, we all know how round a basketball is. Yeah.
Sometimes you go too far. That's the purple prose stuff.
I think my golden key rule with similes is the thing you're comparing it to has to be less obscure than the thing you're describing.
Yeah.
I just made that up. I think that's pretty good.
That's good.
Put it on the board.
Put it on the board.
Launchpad rule and put it in there. Yeah. That's a new rule.
Really?
Well,
who
else?
Your writing is so out there that I don't think you could get a more obscure thing to compare.
Yeah, well, you were telling me before. What were the creatures in the novella you're writing at the moment?
Okay.
The waff.
Yeah, there's the waff, which is a whale and sloth mixed together. And then we have the ephon, which is dolphin and eagle mixed together.
So does it go in the water or the air? I meant to ask you that before.
It can go either.
What?
Yeah.
It's amazing. So it dives in and then it's got wings and can fly. That's pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
And they all talk, obviously.
Yeah, all talk.
Yeah, they all talk.
And there's like a couple other ones. And my favourite one is... Oh, there's two favourite ones. There's Clip.
Clip?
Clip's my favourite one. Clip is narwhal and horse. So it's got the narwhal horn.
So it's a unicorn. But like a weird, really weird looking unicorn.
Not a unicorn. It hates people calling it a unicorn.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I like that character. That's really funny.
Everyone hates it. Like, it hates getting called a unicorn, but everyone calls it a unicorn because it's got the horn and it's got the horse body.
Yeah.
But it absolutely hates getting called a unicorn. And, like, technically, according to him, his full name is Clippy McClop.
Clippy McClop.
That's what you created.
This is why you shouldn't let me help you name your characters.
So I just shortened it down to Clip.
Like it.
Yeah. And then there's a couple other crazy ones, but that's probably my favourite.
Yeah, that's cool.
I like we did character profiles for these. So when we plan the stories, we profile the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And so Hope's coming up with these crazy things. Mm-hmm. And I would not allow you to, they can be as crazy as you want, but we're giving them depth.
Yeah.
So we made them into real characters
like 3D,
with personalities, and we took elements of the animals that they were and made their personalities. They came out really cool.
So then they're stealthy.
What snake? Sorry,
part snake.
Yeah.
So I'm like, then stealthy is in their personality.
Yeah.
Because that's what you relate to a snake. And then we have, with the dolphin, because normally you associate dolphins with being really energetic.
Yeah.
So my dolphin eagle is really energetic.
Yeah, I like it. That's cool. I should use animals as the basis of
Portmanteau
character.
animals.
Character traits. I like the idea of animals as a character trait. You know, like what do you...
What animal are they
Yeah.
compared to?
Yeah.
We should put that in the character profile.
Yeah.
That's
It's
actually
already
really
9
cool, because when
pages
you think
long.
about it, you know, you can...
It already is, sorry.
I mean, a book I'm working on at the moment has a character who is a skinwalker, which is, you know, like someone who can turn into an animal.
Oh, okay.
So cool.
Yeah, and so she, well, it's kind of like a science fiction. So I'm, this is my
the elevator
description
pitch.
of it at the
Yeah.
moment is my science fiction Greek mythology cyberpunk werewolf book. So it's
Yeah.
like,
Mash them
yeah, so
together.
it's basically like a society, Greek
cool.
kind of mythology
Yep.
creatures with a science background. So this and a skinwalker is kind of skinwalker is actually like a Native American mythology about someone who can, you know, become an animal, take
Okay,
on the skin
right.
of an animal. Do you guys know Animorphs? Do you remember
Yeah.
Animorphs? You're probably too young to remember Animorphs. It's basically like these kids who could turn into animals. So the pitch is like it's basically Animorphs versus Transformers. So it's like robots. It's basically like a artificial intelligence take over the world, Terminator style war against the machines. But in order to like all human technology is kind of useless because of the way that machines can control it. So humans basically get their brains downloaded into animals to fight against the robots. And so her animal is a wolf.
Very awesome.
So I think I kind of like the idea of using, even when she's a person, a lot of wolf traits in her. I like that. I'm gonna have to write this down later.
Yeah, it's all good stuff. Do you want a pen?
Good stuff. Yeah,
That's
I like
good.
it. I like the idea of like what animal does
characterises
your
it.
character relate to, or what's their Patronus, right?
Yeah, that's a good idea. We've got a 9-page long character profile that we fill out. It's got I don't know
Jeez.
80.
Not all of us
Lot.
actually do this, because, like,
It's got how many
quite long.
fields is on it? 80 fields or something.
probably.
But I don't think any of
A
them is
lot.
like what is their animal.
No, there's nothing to do with animals on this. We need to add that.
Add that on there.
Because, like, it would be like, what is their relationship to this person?
Yeah.
It has everything.
I
It says shoe
Ab-
size.
You know,
and
shoe size and all.
I used to do that like quite in depth. I don't do it so much anymore.
Mm.
I tend now just to do kind of a few kind of really key things that drive plot and characterization. So I probably do like what do they want?
Oh yeah.
You know, what
Yeah,
do they
what's
want?
the-
What
what
do they
drives-
need? You know, which are different things. So I think that a couple of the key things I like to think about is what is wrong with them at the beginning of the story. So what is their flaw?
Okay.
What wound do they have from the past that's
Yeah.
kind of holding them back? And what do they need to kind of get over that? And then what do they want, which is, you know, what their perceived want is. And often the thing they want and the thing they need are opposed, and that drives conflict.
Very cool. That's a good way to look at it, isn't it?
So like they
Add
think
that to the.
add that.
Yeah, we'll pinch that. Thanks, Justin.
No worries. Yeah, so like what they want,
Yeah.
what
Yeah,
they
pen
want
paper.
could be,
Like 10 pages now.
No,
you
it was
know.
long enough.
I don't know, what they want could be for their company to be successful.
Mm.
What they need is to spend more time with their family, and those two things throughout the story are always competing, right?
Right.
That type of thing. It's,
Their internal
yeah,
conflict.
that drives their internal conflict, and then
Very cool.
obviously the problem with whatever comes in to steal their company or whatever is the big external threat. But if you know what the play off between those two things, the want and need is, you can kind of drive a lot of internal.
Very cool.
conflict.
Good tip.
Good tip.
I think we might. Do you want to tag in over here, Aidan? Do you want to hop up? Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Hope. That's good. Cool.
No, I was wondering what gave you the idea to write like horror stories.
I guess it was kind of like what I was talking about before. So like the idea of what I like. I mean, I wouldn't describe my books as horror as such. They do have horror creatures in them, but I like the idea of the feeling you get from a horror creature, right? So, like, zombies have the overwhelming thing. Vampires like play off people's fear of the dark and stuff like that, and werewolves, I guess, play off the idea that you've got like a caged beast inside you. You know, that side of you that you want to.
Your dark side.
Your dark side.
So
I like that. I like the feelings that horror creatures give people. Like, I really love horror. I mean, Stephen King is one of my favourite authors, so I really love that.
Yeah, so what I'm getting is that you like try and do it like an adventure story with scary creatures.
Yeah, totally. Like, I mean, that's how I would describe my books. Yeah, it's an adventure story. It's a quest story almost, but yeah, with zombies, scary creatures. Yeah, totally.
That's cool.
Sounds really cool.
You'll have to let me know.
They're right there. Yeah,
You'll have to let me know what you think.
Borrow them from the Launchpad library.
Or I'll just read them here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, you can do
read
that.
them here.
Aidan writes a bit of horror himself.
I've tried.
Yeah.
I reckon you did really well. He
Yeah.
you wrote it until you gave yourself nightmares. I think that's a good sign that
Hey,
you're doing
look,
all right.
I reckon you're on the right track. Horror's really hard. Horror is probably the hardest genre to write.
Yeah, we were focusing on the building of anticipation.
Yeah, it's just scaring someone with a book is actually really hard.
Yeah.
Much harder than like with a jump scare in a movie or something. That doesn't, you can't do that in a book. You've really got to build, like I said, building anticipation, building suspense, like that sense of dread.
That's when you're
hard.
scared. It's not really, in a book, it's not when the thing jumps out.
No.
It's when you're anticipating it jumping out.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't go, there's no audible boo.
No.
You know.
There's no from
That
behind
said,
the thing.
Have you ever had a jump scare from a book? Have you ever actually jumped while you're reading? Because I have.
Have you?
Yeah.
I don't know, actually.
Yeah.
I've felt like really physically scared reading a book. And sometimes it's not even, it's just like the weird imagery a lot of horror writers can conjure up. Reading Joe Hill, who is Stephen King's son, actually.
Okay.
He's written a bunch of books that are really great. One of them is called Heart-Shaped Box, and there's this, basically this guy can, like, he starts seeing ghosts and stuff. I won't go into the whole plot or anything, but there's this scene where he talks about like walking down the hallway and he sees like this old man sitting in a chair and his eyes are all like scribbly, like constantly moving scribbles, like someone scratched them out with a pen, and it freaked me. That's creepy. Like it creepy, and the way he described it, I was like,
that's cool.
That was a close the book for a moment. Just like,
I'll tell you when I jump scared from a book, which I think is so impressive that an author can make me physically.
Yeah, that is impressive.
Which was I don't know if anyone's going to do it. It was 1984. George Orwell.
Yeah.
I always go to say Orson Welles, but I try to say George Orwell for some reason. Just my mind mixes those two up. George Orwell, and it's the scene when the guy and the girl meet sort of very illegally in some abandoned place, and they're on their own, and it's like the whole scene's like this shouldn't be happening. Yeah. And then one of them says like something, and the other one says, I agree, and then the third person says, me too.
Yeah.
And I jumped. I physically jumped because I'm like, who's this third person in the room with me? Like, yeah. And I was like, that was well done.
That is really well done. That's a great book, isn't it? I mean, one of the best.
Yeah. That was only once, and I don't think it'll ever happen again. Because how do you jump scare in a book? Yeah.
So well, when I first heard like being jump scared by a book, I first imagined like a book going evil eyes and like a mouth, going arms and legs, and then like
in Harry
once
Potter
I put it down, like that, and then like jumping up and eating me.
Yeah, well, that would make me jump.
That would scare you.
No, if
that would count as a jump scare from a book if a book literally jumped up and tried to eat you.
But then describe it perfectly in a story.
Yeah.
Have an iPad book where you read it digitally, and it tracks where you're up to, and then when you read the bit that's meant to scare you, the iPad goes.
I reckon that's cheating.
That's pretty good though. I just invented that. Patent pending.
So what sort of horror, like what monsters do you like?
Well, I don't really know how to explain it, but I can actually read out what I've wrote.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Get it?
Yeah.
Other drawer, mate.
Let's do it. A live reading. I like it.
Yep.
I think I just need to find my book.
You didn't write it on the computer, did you? We've got to have this reading now that we've said this.
Yeah. I'm keen.
Super sausage.
Super sausage.
That was my old hero. Now I've got a hero called Cork Boy.
Cork Boy.
Better.
What's his power?
He can shoot wine and stuff. Anything that a
I
cork
reckon my mum would
anything
love
that
that here.
can go in a bottle that has a cork thing on it. Wine, beer, whatever. And then, like, he's got, like, a sword on his shoulder going across down there, like a cape, a dagger, a gun, utility belt and stuff.
Nice. I started writing a superhero story the other day, actually. It's about a guy who... Do you want to know the superhero in my book? His power is the most useless super... He's, like, lives in a world with heaps of superheroes, like a, like a Marvel universe kind of thing. Loads of heroes.
Or DC.
Yeah, or DC. His power is the ability to picture people, bearded people, as they would look without a beard. That's his that's his superpower, right? So it's like the most lamest superpower. He can just picture people how they would look without facial hair. And then he later learns also that his power though can work on masks, so he can know what someone who's wearing a mask would look like without a mask on. So he suddenly learns like the secret identity of every hero in the universe, and that's becomes like his, suddenly he knows who all the heroes are.
So it's kind of like X-ray vision.
Yeah, kind of like X-ray vision.
But not as good.
But not as good.
And lately, Andy and I have been working on like another story. It's like ice zombies and stuff.
Cool.
Now we're working on like a really dumb story. It's like just really silly. Called The Last Day on Earth, where everyone's like partying because it's like it.
Yeah, it's called The Last Day on Earth, and it's about a meteorite's coming to destroy Earth, but everyone finds it hilarious. So the whole world thinks it's really hilarious that they're about to die. And it turns out that, spoiler, the meteor is sentient.
Oh, yeah.
It's coming to Earth to absorb all the biotic matter and grow. And it's casting this sort of spell on Earth to make everyone humoured by it rather than terrified, so that no one does anything about it.
Now, I want to give this a proper scary effect.
Okay.
So can I ask, like, Andy if it's okay to turn the lights off?
Jeez.
You got that? And then I'd like everyone to stand up.
I don't know. I'm getting a little scared already. It's going to get
fun.
dark in... Okay, all right.
It's not too dark.
Am I standing up?
Yep.
Is that what we're doing?
And try and close your eyes.
Oh, hang on.
Come on.
Now.
It's meant to be dark.
He's a prankster, so I wouldn't trust him.
I'm feeling
Sometimes.
scared and we haven't even started this reading.
Yeah, I've got an... I opened my fridge to get a late night snack when I heard my daughter scream. I rushed to her room. I couldn't believe what I could see. It was like something from a nightmare. Like nothing else I've ever seen. There was blood and bones everywhere. I was shocked. I went into the room and saw my daughter's phone neatly placed on her pillow's dead center. I went around her room for clues of what happened. I saw a hole in her wall, a big hole, and her phone made a buzzing noise. I turned to see what it was. I saw the combination 5421S666. I searched up the combination online and found an article about a creature that looked like a mix between a squid, a robot and a pumpkin. I started to dial 000 when I realised my daughter was probably dead. Then I got the idea that I might be killed as well. Just as I almost fainted with fear, my daughter's phone buzzed. It said, "You're next. Prepare to die. Sincerely, the Terriers." I heard a noise coming from her closet. It was just a soft noise, a scratchy noise.
Well, he's doing the sound effects about this.
This is where we
I thought it
building
maybe
suspense.
I thought maybe I had just imagined it, but then I heard it again. I paused, suddenly feeling like something was watching me. I slowly took a step towards the closet, trying to be as quiet as I could. When I opened it, there was nothing inside.
It's working well.
Editing on the fly.
But as I turned to leave her closet, it was looking down at me.
That's how it's done.
Look at this. I like it. Live here.
Can we turn the lights on now?
Yes.
That's good. I like the suspense building.
The last thing I remember, I'm not typing now.
Okay.
The last thing I remember happening was a screeching noise and a slash across, and like a scratch across my body. And then I woke up in the middle of a rocket crater.
This future Stephen King here, I reckon. Horror.
Yeah, so see if I left my image here. No, I don't have one here.
Oh, looking forward to. Was this the squid robot pumpkin monster?
So it's a squid leg,
Yeah.
and then like it's got a normal businessman's like body up to here,
Businessman, like a
Scariest type of man.
and then it's got like blood stains all over the suit,
That's awesome.
robot claws,
Yeah, that's
like
awesome.
a jack-o'-lantern head with a top hat.
It's pretty good.
But then in the image I drew, it had like blood and bones falling from its claws and a pool of blood around the ground and one snapped bone.
You taking notes, Justin?
That's full on.
All right, let's wrap this up. My batteries are running out on my cameras, so
Yeah,
Justin,
sure.
thanks for coming here today
No worries, thanks.
and
Thanks, bud.
sharing your knowledge.
Yeah, for sure.
Welcome back anytime at all. Would be honoured
I'm
to have you.
coming back for the conclusion to
Well,
this.
you have to find out what happens here.
I guess I better keep working.
You better
Better
get
keep-
working. That's
get
it.
writing.
Get writing.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.